Ujumbe means message. And today's message is the rise and fall of Gondar. We about to get into it. Get you something to write on, something to write with. And today we're going to talk about the rise and fall of Gondar, Ethiopia's forgotten empire. We are coming out of the book, The Ethiopians, A History by Richard Pankhurst. I hope all is well with you. Get you something to write on, something to write with. Sit back and relax. I hope all is well with you wherever you are. And so let's get into it. All right. So today's questions. It is, what did Emperor Fasilides choose? Why did he choose Gondar as Ethiopia's first permanent capital? And what did this decision symbolize for the empire? Number two, how did Gondar's architecture, religion, and culture reflect both Ethiopia's tradition and its global connections? Okay. What internal division and external pressures contributed to Gondar's decline during the Zamanese Masafint, or the era of princes? And number four, what lessons does Gondar's rise and fall offer about the fragility of empire and importance of unity in leadership? And was there a double murder? Yeah, you know there's a spin. Y'all. Hey, I read it. As a matter of fact, I read it last night. I'm like, oh, it got different, right? So yeah. So I hope all is well with you. So we're going to talk about the rise and fall of Gondar, right? So here's the topic. The foundation of the city, economic and religious life, the golden age, the shadows of division, the era of decline, and the fall of Gondar and the falling king. Now, get this. Last week we discussed how Ethiopia, because of its division between, say, Christian side of Ethiopia, Muslim side of Ethiopia, we started to notice how Europe, they started to invade. The Portuguese came in and started to play politics with the Christian side of Ethiopia. And then the Muslim side of Ethiopia was trying to connect with the Ottoman Empire, not knowing that because of their infighting, because of the divisions and their issues, both Christian Ethiopia and Muslim Ethiopia was at the brink of collapse, right? And then the Ottoman Empire just waited, and then it occupied the seaports and the trade routes of Ethiopia for about 300 years. All right. So, this is one of our major focal points, Ethiopian Cushion Kemet. Whenever you deal with King Cam and Ujumbe podcast, this is what we own. Okay. Yes, we're dealing with African history as a whole, but for the most part, this is where we're going to be. And here's our pillars. Pillar number one is Ethiopia, the source and sanctuary. And this is what we're going to focus on today. Pillar two is Kemet, the blueprint of sacred civilization. Number three, Kush and Nubia, the corridor of continuity. And number four, for my esoteric scientists in the back, the hidden codes, spiritual science, symbols, and esoteric legacy of Africa. All right, let's go. My question is to you, though, what happens when the capital city becomes the jewel of an empire? Okay, but then only to collapse into a shadow of its former self. What do you think? Okay, and I believe this story is about Gondar. This jewel is Gondar, the city of castles, the city of kings, the city of glory. But also, it's also a little bit of mystique, intrigue, betrayal, and decline. So, and some people call it the Camelot of Africa, right? The Camelot of Africa. Gondar, Gondar, rose from the Ethiopian highlands in the 17th century. And so right now, we're now in the 1700s. Okay, we're in the 1700s. We're gradually approaching the modern era. All right. And it's filled with fortresses and sacred churches and sacred spaces. But as quickly as it rose, it fell. And it was undone basically by division, infighting, war, and betrayal. And so today, right now, the stone walls, whisper of a dynasty that once dreamed of eternity. And so, in the shadow of of a rebellion, of other rebellion and broken faith, we have a young king. We have a young king who came to restore and save the soul of Ethiopia. His name is Fasilides, Fasilides. My Ethiopian fan, please forgive me if I butcher the words, right? And so Fasilides, he came to restore Ethiopia. He was a restorer of church of the Orthodoxy. For those who don't know, the Ethiopian church is their main church is the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Church. Shout out to the fam out there in Ethiopia. He was the builder of castles, the founder of Gondar, and Ethiopia's forgotten Camelot. So before Gondar rose as a great and beautiful city, before it became known in the Ethiopian highlands, where there was some turmoil, there was some issues. Emperor, his father, Susanios, embraced Roman Catholicism. And you know that's a no-no, right? Because remember, before that, when the Portuguese came, they was trying to get the Ethiopians to politically align themselves with the Europeans, and the best way to do it is through religion. But you know that's a trick of imperialism, and that's a trick of colonialism. They even when we've seen many examples, even when our African leaders and many others ascribe to their point of view, the Europeans did not see them as equals. You see what I'm saying? And so this, by his father embracing the Roman Catholic Church like that, because of Jesuit missionaries, the Ethiopian people who was deeply rooted in the Orthodox faith was more, it shocked their culture. It basically rocked their world in a sense. And this was more than, say, just change of religion. This was a fundamental cultural betrayal, a psychological betrayal. You know, if everybody's doing this and everybody's doing the thing, and this person's doing something different, and it's totally against what they're doing, what they're trying to do culturally, that could pose a problem. And then the problem ensued because rebellion spread, and of course, blood was shed in Ethiopia, and the empire was falling. It trembled. So when Susanios abdicated in 1632, his son, the young prince Fasilides, inherited not only the throne but a nation that was divided and shattered. Okay, his first act was decisive. It was focused. You know, as a leader, you gotta have a plan, right? You gotta have an idea. And so what he did, he went step one, he kicked out the Europeans. Step one, kick out the Jesuits, which he did. And he also banned Roman Catholicism and restored the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo Church to its rightful place in the heart of the kingdom. For this, he will be forever remembered as the restorer of faith, a reformer. But, you know, he was a guardian of religion, and he was a builder of dreams. He was a visionary, y'all. So in 1636, he chose the site north of Lake Tana. For Brother Mo and for the fam, I got a map, but I got to get to it. North of Lake Tana, because, you know, Ethiopia is the sacred place of the Blue Nile. Of course, the White Nile goes on and splits in another direction, but the Blue Nile and Lake Tana, that's where it is. The fertile fields, the clear waters, and this place was great land. It was fertile land. Okay, and so from that vision, from that idea, rose Gondar, a city of stone castles, painted churches, unlike anything before. Okay, and I would like to say, before there was any form of establishment, a form of order in the world, it was done in Ethiopia. All right, so the prince oversaw the construction of the royal enclosure, the Fasilgibi, Ghebbi, Fasilgibi. These were towers and fortresses that would symbolize Ethiopia's power for generations. Okay, and this is what it looks like. Okay, and so he founded Gondar in 1636 after his father's embraced to Catholicism, they had to switch up. And Gondar was I think it was divine providence, and that this man chose this place. Look at it. As beautiful as it is right now, I could only imagine how beautiful it was back then. Okay, and so he took over Gondar not only for a visual aspect, aspect of it, or for the aesthetic. It was practical. It was close to what? The Red Sea. Okay, and it was also close to the. It was also at the. It was close to the Ethiopian interior. The highland position offered natural defense, fertile farmlands, and fresh water. Okay, Fasiladas, the royal enclosure. The royal enclosure became his vision, his place of power, his seat of power, the grand castle, just like in Kemet or in ancient Egypt, where Waset or Thebes, Thebes, Thebes is the seat of power. He envisioned Gondar, Fasiladas, the seat of power. And so this was a place with grand castles, audience halls, banqueting houses, and fortifications unlike anywhere else or anything else in Africa. Gondar's foundation marked the turning point, the first permanent capital in Ethiopia's long history of shifting royal courts, because, for a while, the kings would, their court and their palace, it was basically like a tabernacle. They would go, they would be nomadic. There was traveling castles in a sense, right? Now this was a permanent fixture. This was a permanent place. So to contemporaries, it was more than a city. It was a location. It was a destiny. It was a place that everybody wanted to be. So, and of course, being suspicious of foreign influence because of how the Portuguese and the Jesuits did his father, the emperor, the now Emperor Fasilides, turned Ethiopia inward. Okay, sometimes to build your community, you can't deal with everybody on the outside. You got to deal with you and yours, right? So as a leader, he dealt with the family, the Ethiopian family on the inside. He severed ties from Ethiopian powers, yet allowing trade with Sudan and the Red Sea to continue. Gondar absorbed echoes of Portuguese arches, Indian balconies, and Arab domes, but it remained proudly and fully Ethiopian at its core. So when he passed away, when he died in 1667, he left behind the throne, the capital, and a first permanent place, of establishment in Ethiopia's long history. His legacy was faith, sovereignty, and stone, a foundation that would define empire's golden age. He was a restorer of orthodoxy, the builder king, the founder of Gondar, Ethiopia's forgotten Camelot, and it still lives today as what we see here. And so, but I got to get the book. I got to crack the book open. So, on page 109, right? Hope you got your book. If not, the affiliate link is in the description. All right. So here we are, the Ethiopians, a history. Okay, and so he says, and he opens up the foundation of the city. Fasilidas, like so many of his forebears, decided to found a new capital, abandoning his father's fine place in Dankaz, which may have been associated with a period of conflict. So he had to leave that place. Why? Because it was full of anger, it was full of bitterness, and he didn't want to be a part of that, right? You wouldn't want to be a part of a place that's full of anger and contention like that, right? And so he moved some 20 miles northeast, and so he established Gondar in the mountains between Kaha and Enkarab, between the mountains of Gaha and Enkarab rivers. Okay, Gondar was destined to remain Ethiopia's capital and most populous city for over 2 centuries. This man founded a city, a capital that lasted over 2 centuries. The United States just not getting here, right? And so the foundation was subject to numerous legends, but one of the most widely known holds that the archangel came, okay, and prophesied or gave a message to Emperor Lebna Dengel that his son Menes, having left Shawa, would have a capital at a place beginning with the letter G. Yeah, he would go and establish a capital at a place with the beginning of the letter G. So this story seeks to explain the establishment of royal capital. So the letter G. This is shout out to Brother Isu, One Voice Africa. This, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the letter representing G in the Gael script is Gaul, Gawl, Gaul. That's what it looks. And so, according to the author, the story seeks to explain. One more time, let you guys look at it. Okay, and now it's just funny because when I'm looking at it, it looks like the number 7. Y'all let me know. Does the Gael script for the letter G look like a 7 to you? Like and comment below. All right. So, according to the author, the story seeks to explain the establishment of royal capitals and a succession of settlements starting with G, such as Guzara, Gorgora, and Gondar. All right. So that was a prominent concept at the time, right? So, like his father, he endowed the capital with a sizable palace, okay, known to this day as, like I said before, Fasiladas Gimb, or Fasal building, larger and more impressive than any structure erected in the country up to that time. Okay, and so the construction of the Gondar Palace was built by stone and mortar. So for people to assume the fact that to assume the idea that there was no master builders in Africa, yeah, their assumption they're wrong. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna lean further into it and say that there was other master builders outside of Kemet. There are master builders right here building Gondar. Okay, they with stone and mortar in the form of a castle, was strategically important, strong enough to resist anything less than a full-scale artillery attack. Why? Because a century or so before, new weapons came in there, including cannons. So they had to fortify their kingdom. Okay, and so get this, he was. This is another look. This is another picture of the castle. So he spent the emperor spent much of his time on campaign, but almost invariably returned to his palace. I would go back home too. If you look at that, man, yeah, I would go there. Hang out. Think about it. If you spend a lot of time on the road, if you spend a lot of time in them streets, and you get your own place, if you get your own home, your own apartment or whatever, you don't. After a while, you're content with being there. Yeah. And so, yeah, he spent a lot of time at home. He also not only built castles, but he also built other buildings in the city. At least one of them in the vicinity of his palace, as well as a number of bridges. This reminds me of Queen Hatshepsut. When she built her mortuary temple, she built other buildings around it. See what I'm saying? And the thing is, it shows the African concept of Ubuntu, right? You're not just building for yourself, you're building other things. You're building other things around it so everybody can benefit from it. All right. And so, yeah, this is another image here. And so what happens is, he, of course, just like all kings, they must transition, right? By 1667, he was succeeded by his son, Emperor Johannes, and in 1682, by his grandson, Iyashu I. Both built further palaces in the immediate vicinity of the Fasiladas. Okay, the reigns of the first 3 Gondarian rulers thus witnessed the growth of a large imperial quarter, as well as doubtless a steady expansion of the city as a whole. The historic importance of Gondar lay largely in its relative permanence, which contrasted to the transient character of the temporary or instant capitals. Like I said earlier, the instant capitals of earlier times, enduring as it did with one reign to the next. This reminds me of the, how all the kings would add on, just like the Temple of Waset or Temple of Luxor. They would build, one king would build one segment, and then another would add on, another would add on. Even all the way up to King Taharka. Taharka went up there and added his section to Waset, to the Grand Temple of Luxor. Yeah. So his sons and grandsons added on to it. Yeah. Yeah. So, but by the way, if you are enjoying the content, and you want to know more about Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet, like and subscribe. See what I'm saying? All right. So we can all learn together. Let's get it. So we talked about the foundation of the city, economic. We're about to get into economic and religious life, the golden age, shadows of division, the era of decline, and the fall of Gondar and the fallen king. But hold on. I got something else. Got some more stuff. I forgot. The palaces and the courts. Now, the oldest, according to the author, the oldest of these palaces that of Emperor Fasiladas is the largest. And then the other ones consist of two lofty stories crowned with a flat roof and with a high crenellated parapet above, which raises an arch. Okay. And so around that establishment, like I said earlier, several further palaces were erected by his son and his grandson, and the latter in particular built large two-story structures immediately adjacent to that of his grandfather. The palace compound, by the end of the 17th century, thus consisted, according to the Armenian accounts, okay, it was more than 120 large structures beside the gardens and the fields and the plantations. So by the time other people got to it and saw it was something to see. They had gardens, they had buildings, they had houses, they had homes. These Europeans didn't understand, how did these Africans build all this like this? Yeah, because we have to remember, a lot of the Europeans was coming from a situation of struggle, or a situation of not having a home, or not having water to bathe in or water to drink. You see what I'm saying? So to come from there and see that in Ethiopia or other parts of Africa was mind-blowing to them. And it also brought some envy too, right? Now, let me get off this. I'm gonna show you. There's another notable building that I didn't put on here, and this is what it looks like, y'all. All right, check it out. All right. So another notable building located northwest of the palace compound was the bathing pavilion. So, like I said, we as African people, we love to bathe, right? We love to put water on ourselves, right? And so then we had a European named Charles Poncet, Poncet. He states that the palace had magnificent basin of water and served for a pious ceremony. Remember, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, they was very active and they was very involved with what was going on. So everything had a religious undertone or some kind of spiritual concept connected to it. The pool is to this day filled every year for Temkat, on which occasion the water is brought to it, and as in the past, by a pipe running from the nearby Kaha River. Gondar is as a political capital as well as a spiritual place, a spiritual capital. Okay, Poncet, who witnessed this in 1699 during the reign of Emperor Yashu, he shared his thoughts. Okay, he said, entered into a hall where the emperor was seated upon his throne. It was a sort of couch covered in red damask, flowered with gold. Couch with red and gold on it. There were roundabout great cushions wrought with gold. His throne, of which the feet were messy silver, and placed at the bottom of the hall, and in an alcove covered with a dome, all shining with gold and azure. So I'm gonna say this: Mansa Musa wasn't the only one that had a lot of gold and silver. The family in Ethiopia had it too. So this thing here, they went to Ethiopia and they said, wow, they got gold too. Yeah. Yeah. And so the emperor was clothed with a vest of silk embroidered with gold and with very long sleeves. The scarf which he was girt was embroidered after the same manner. It had gold embroidery, right? He was bareheaded and his hair braided very neatly. A great emerald glittered on his forehead and added majesty to him. That emerald on his forehead remind me of the two ladies, Nekhbet and Wajet, right? He was alone in that area, seated on his couch with his legs crossed in the manner of the Orientals. Okay, the great lords were on each side of him, so he had elders flanking him, standing in their ranks, having their hands crossed one upon the other, and observing in awful or respectful silence. Yeah, so he saw the kings and rulers uh, in the height of their glory, right? So yeah, he went to the palace. He saw gold everywhere. He saw the furniture having gold. He saw the people in order and in their place. So I think he was amazed at this because he assumed that the only people was like that was out there in London. No, there's royalty that really uh, are duly established in Africa. You see, let's go. So, economic and religious life. Economic and religious life. Okay. Let me see. Get my notes. And so, Gondar was not only a political capital, not only a religious capital, but it was also a major cultural center. It was situated at the intersection of three major caravan routes. One ran southward across the Blue Nile, ran southward across the Blue Nile. Okay, this is the Blue Nile right here, and to the rich lands in the southwest, the empire's principal source of gold. Mm-hmm. Okay, principal source of gold. The two others ran respectively northeastward to Massawa and northwestward to Sudan. So there was three major caravan routes. One along the Blue Nile, and then the other two ran northeastward towards Massawa and northwestward towards Sudan. One northeast, Massawa, for the famine in the back, Eritrea, okay, and then west towards Sudan. Okay, these consisted mainly of textiles and manufactured goods, including firearms, as many as valuable exports from the South. This was a three-way commerce pass by way of the city, where the trade was carried out in a large open market outside the palace compound. So the palace was not just a place where the king just sat, but it was also a place where business was handled. Okay, and so for the Lake Tana is where Gondar was close to where Gondar was established by water, and it is at the highlands, and this is where the source of the Blue Nile is. Okay, and of course at the edge we have Djibouti right there, we have Eritrea, and so on. So Gondar was very connected to Lake Tana and the Blue Nile. Okay, yeah. So trade in Gondar, and indeed in most parts, according to the author, was largely in Muslim hands. Yeah. So yes, there was a three-way commerce, but some of those trade routes were controlled by the Muslims. Okay, and so this was very surprising, especially when Ethiopia, the northern part of Ethiopia, was mainly Christian. These trade routes led to these trade routes led into the Islamic territories, notably Arabia, Sudan, and Massawa, in all of which Muslim merchants receive preferential treatment. Okay, the result was that while the Christian rulers of Gondar monopolized the political power, commerce and money and trade was controlled by Muslim merchants. Yeah. So on the northern side, okay, we had, shout out to wordalice.com, by the way, but the northern side, they had the political power. But in the south and the trade routes, it was ran by the Muslim merchants, okay, who possessed most of the capital's mercantile wealth and included some of the city's richest inhabitants, okay. The Muslims of Gondar lived for the most part in their own distinct settlement known as Islam Bet. Islam Bet, E-S-L-A-M Bet. Bet being the Amharic for house. Okay, Islamij or Islamij signifying country. It lay to the southwest of the city at the lower stretch of the land near the junction of the Gaha and Amgre rivers. Okay, so it's towards the south, right around here. Okay, all right. So let me see here. And so many churchmen, many Christians, it was traditional that they had their own places and spaces. Gondar, like most Ethiopian imperial capitals, was a great religious center, which, because of its size and population, has several dozen churches as well as numerous priests or daptaras, or lay clerics, deacons, and monks and nuns. Many churchmen was out there handling business and praying for people, and they also had the some of the monks from the Coptic church out there. Okay, and Christian monarchs of Gondar, like their predecessors, were great church builders. Emperor Fasiladas founded no less than 7 places of worship in the city. His sons and grandsons also continued that tradition. And so, and also not only the Muslims were there, not only the Christians were there, but the Ethiopian Jews was there. So the big 3 were out there. They call it Fasiladas of Gondar lived west of Islam Bet, beyond the Gaha River, and played a notable role in the city's economy. The Ethiopian Jews, the men worked mainly as blacksmiths and weavers. There are also a number of stone masons, some of whom were engaged in both palace and church building. They didn't find it. They didn't think it was a problem helping build the castles and buildings in Ethiopia. Why? Because the unity of Ethiopia, the unity of the community, was more important than any kind of ideology. See, nowadays, what happens is we say we got to come together. Once we come together, the major dividing point is somebody's ideology or some kind of moot point, and I ain't gonna help them because they say tomato, not tomato. We got other things to do. We got communities to build. We got children to teach. We got things to do, y'all. And so so they helped build. So the city also had Muslim craftsmen. They lived in Islam Bet, and they also was tent makers, and so the population of Gondar comprised of the people of the 3 main faiths. Okay, perhaps 2/3 were Orthodox Christian, and then possibly 1/3 were Muslims, and then the rest of them were Jews. The 3 principal religious communities at Gondar tended to live apart from each other, even though they kind of worked together, but they lived apart from each other, right? And this was particularly noticeable in the case of the Muslims, right? Where Al-Hami observed that they lived in a village, a man named Al-Hami. They lived, most of the Muslims, they lived close to the mosque, and they had a Quranic school, and it was exclusively inhabited by Muslims. Despite the separation, there seems to have also been mixing. Okay, and so they had to work together. All right, so this was the economic and religious life of during the time of Gondar, where the big 3 were interacting and working with each other. Will it always be like that? Unfortunately not. No, it didn't always happen. And so the age-old Ethiopian custom of working together during that period, it start to kind of fade, right? Because then there comes some issues, there comes some problems, right? So we deal with the economic and religious life. Oh, and I forgot, of course, the golden age, right? We had to deal with that. Right? And so Gondar became that architectural marvel. But hold on, yeah, here it is. Golden Age. I'm getting ahead of. I'm excited. Get ahead of myself. The Golden Age. We had successive emperors, including Johannes and Yashu, expanded the city. Gondar became a architectural marvel. Okay, its castles bore a mix of influences: Portuguese, Jesuit styles, Indian Mughal touches, Arab arches, and native Ethiopian stonework. At its height, Gondar was home of over 60 churches. Chief among them was the Deputy Berham Selassie, famed for a ceiling of painted angels. Now, Gondar thrived. Here it is, fam. If you're writing, Gondar thrived as a religious center. Pilgrims from all over Ethiopia journeyed to sacred sites. I would have a cultural hub, music, poetry, Gene poetry, illuminated manuscripts, and intricate iconography flourished. So we have religious center, cultural center, a political stage, coronations, royal festivals were staged with grand ceremony, right? And of course, you can make money. It was a trade hub. Caravans brought ivory, gold, coffee. I still want to drink some Ethiopian coffee. Still want to do that. And unfortunately, slaves through his gates. Then we had some conflict, right? But you know, good things don't seem like they don't always last, right? According to James Bruce, Gondar is unlike any city I've seen in Africa. Palaces, churches, gardens rise together, though the grandeur of its beginnings is dimmed by the intrigues within. For over a century, Gondar was Ethiopia's beacon of light, a city where faith and culture and kinship converge. But then comes decline and conflict. We have shadows of division. Even during its glory, Gondar started to decline. Yeah. Court palaces turn dangerous. Rival noble families get into it. Often from powerful provinces like Tigray, Gojam, and Begemdir manipulated imperial succession. Then we have religious debates that divide. I told you about the ideology issue, right? This disputes over Christology, fasting rules, liturgical practice fueled tension between monks, bishops, and lay people. Then the Oromo frontier expanded from the south. Regional lords asserted growing autonomy. So you have the nobles that sat at council, but each sought his own throne. They was in there with the king, but they wanted his power too. They crowned the king with their lips, but their hearts betrayed him. Yeah, the castle was shining in the sunlight, but behind these walls was cracks and it was shadows, right? And so we got, before I get to Emperor Bakafa real quick, I got to deal with this. At the death of Emperor Yashu, the third of the great rulers, he was assassinated. Yep. He was assassinated. His death was followed by a period of weak government. 4 short-lived monarchs reigned within a span of 21 years. 2 new churches were constructed by usurping monarch named Emperor Yostos. He only reigned for 4 years. And 2 others by his successor, Emperor Yeshu's son, Dawit III, and later also resumed building activity in the palace compound where he erected a small but attractive Dabal Gameb, or the House of Song. So then we have Emperor Bakafa, okay, who temporarily reestablished the powers of the monarch. Okay, his 9-year reign witnessed the construction of 2 further palaces, one of them on a single-story building, still seen today, and vivid evidence of the way in which Bakafa apparently revived the royal grandeur in early times is provided in his own writing, in his chronicles, describing his great banquets. He had a banquet hall which were held at one time or another in half a dozen palaces. That was a party. Look, if I can't handle business, I'm just going. These folks like, look, we finna party, right? And so it states that the emperor was seated on a golden stool, before which he would be placed. Be placed at table laden with immense fineries of food, so many indeed that it couldn't be counted. Okay, and so he had guests coming from everywhere. It was curtains, and next to it had furniture, and Bakafa, like his predecessor, spent much of his time in expeditions. Those took him away from the many parts of the now greatly diminished empire. You up here road tripping, and your empire's crumbling. Gotta focus. Right? Then we have, so was there a double murder? Was there a double murder? Let's get ready. Now, we have Yashu II and his grandmother, Mentewwab. Okay, Bakafa was succeeded by his son Yashu II. His throne name was Alim Sakab, Alim Sakad, who was an infant when he became emperor. When he became emperor, right? He was like King Tut. He was young. So it was a lot of political influence and external factors that was at work right here. Fortunately, his grandmother was still living, unlike possibly Queen Tai, right? Power was therefore exercised in the case of 2 centuries earlier, Empress Eleni by the deceased monarch's widow, Empress Mentewwab, who held position of regent. Her first task, according to the Scottish traveler James Bruce, was to call 4 of her brothers to court and place them in position of high supreme authority. So, as regent, her first act of service was to put her brothers in power. I got a question. Would you do that? If you had the power and influence, would you put your family on? Like and comment below. All right. I didn't give no condition. I didn't give no stipulation. Let me know. Like and comment below. All right. So Iyashu's first years, he was too young to participate in the expeditions. Therefore, he remained in the capital with his mother. Their prolonged residence gave the city even more than ever a character of that fixed capital, right? But the nobles, often in fact one of Mentewwab's brothers or other kinsmen, were also at play. As he grew older, the young monarch grew bored with remaining in the capital. He wanted to step out. He wanted to get off the porch, and began to leave on hunting expeditions. On one occasion in 1738, he brought back a large troop of monkeys, which was said to have so surprised the citizens that they exclaimed in biblical vein or biblical verse, "We have neither heard nor seen nor have our parents told of us of such a marvel." Okay. Before the youthful emperor turned to more warlike activities, he embarked in 1741 on a journey to his expedition to Sennar, Sennar. He is said to have returned to Gondar with many prisoners and money and gold of all kinds, including no less than 300 camels and 20,000 cattle. He went and came back with some stuff. They were kept for a time within Makayaba, okay, or palace walls. Now, the Empress, throughout this time, remained in Gondar. She remained in the castle where she had, the place that she helped build. This structure, located at the northern end of the royal compound, was far more elaborate than those of the of Fasiladas and his immediate descendants. So she had a nice place. She had a nice little home. She didn't feel like going nowhere. You know, she didn't feel like doing all that. And so in front of each floor, the front of each floor had 2 rows of doors with carved arches decorated with decorated with red tuft, while the walls fitted with several balconies and were profusely ornamented with a number of Ethiopian-style crosses. As you can see, this was her house. That's nice. That's nice. He said, "Look, I don't have to be out there with the castle and everything. Just build this." Yeah, yeah. Now another building was erected at the end of the palace compound, probably about the same time, and it can be seen to this day. Was the Washeba, or the thermal bath, another bath. Okay, right? Look, we gonna bathe. You understand? And so, but then here come the fall. The breaking point came towards the middle of like the 1750s, where the Ethiopians and the groups of Ethiopia, and then the Oromo started to collide. Okay, and so what happened is the early 17th century witnessed a steady growth of Oromos into the imperial state. Later, during the reign of Johannes I, Prince Yashu, and the heir to the throne, found refuge in the Oromo country, where he befriended Cordidas, a large group of Amhara defectors or slaves who wished to return to the imperial rule and Christian faith. So, on subsequently assuming the throne, he assisted no less than 100,000 of his men to achieve their ambition. During his reign, many Oromos also allied themselves with the imperial state. So it sounds like it was some kind of mutual benefit there. Okay, because some of the Ethiopian nobles in the north weren't really feeling the king that much, so he needed some allies. He needed some help. He didn't go to the Europeans, but he went to the Oromo. The Oromo leaders, they took positions of prominence in Gondar. Okay, and so some of them became chiefs. Okay, there was like a Laban chief Tigwe who attained the rank of Mentewwab, or the king's beloved courtier. So he had the Oromo in his camp. He felt like he was safe, right? The Oromo involvement in imperial affairs increased during the reign of Tewofolos and Yostos, and in particular Dawit III, who on one occasion used Jawi troops to suppress dissident monks. So he used. Okay, so we have Christian Ethiopia, their king, the Christian Ethiopian king, put the Oromo people against the Christian Ethiopian monks. That now you understand the decline. They started putting where about a century before that, they was against this man for joining or converting to the Roman Catholic Church because of the Ethiopian Tawhidi tradition. Now they're sending basically foreign soldiers to fight their own priests and monks in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawhidi Church. Yeah, that was what was going on. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, they got active. His successor, Bakafa, spent part of his youth among the Yaju Oromo, so he was culturally connected, kind of, sort of, with the Oromo. Okay, and so Jawi, Tuluma, and other Oromo troops played an even more important role during the reign of Bakafa's son, Iyashu II. Under the influence of his mother, Empress Mentewwab, he promoted a marriage between the Ethiopian groups. Okay, Yashu was succeeded in 1755 by his half Oromo son, Eos, who depended heavily on the Oromo people. Okay, then we have the rise of Ras Makael Shi'ub of Tigray. Yeah, so when Iyashu died, okay, Iyashu II died in 1755. Emperor Yoas took over. Okay, he was a child monarch. Okay, he enabled Empress Mentewwab to serve again as regent, doing so for her grandson and previously for her son. But now we have this fella here because of the transition of power, because of the fractures in the northern part of Gondar. Because of that, because the fractures that was seen in the chink in the armor of the, and you can see the cracks in the bricks of Gondar symbolically, there was weakness there. And then there's an increasing Ormuz influence in court and was regarded with suspicion by several nobles who began to conspire among themselves. This facilitated the rise of Ras Makael Seul of Tigray. This man controlled the northern trade route to the coast. He also not only had the trade routes, he also had firearms. Yeah. And so the growing power of the Tigray ruler became apparent in 1755 when he sent forth for Gondar with his province taxes. He started taxing people, which included he was trying to tax them get their carpets. He was taxing trying to tax rifles, anything, silver, gold coins. It wasn't just money; it was goods and services he was trying to tax. And in lieu of Yashu's death and on the ascension of this boy king, okay, there was a power vacuum in Gondar. He came, Makael came just in time, right in the middle of transition. And so the Empress realized that the walls were closing in. In the years that followed, however, he steadily increased his wealth and power. In recognition of this, he was promoted to the rank of Ras, okay, and invited to the capital in 1757, okay? And so, according to Bruce, with his army in order of battle, approached Gondar with a very warlike appearance. This was not a diplomatic mission. Okay, this was not a diplomatic mission, right? This was a takeover. He descended from the highlands of Wagora into the valleys which surrounded the capital and took possession of the rivers of Kaha and Angrab, which ran through these valleys and which alone supplied Gondar the water. So he found a choke point in Gondar. This man was strategic. He found that a lot of the rivers flowed in one direction. All the main focal points. He found one major focal point going into Gondar, and he basically took over that place. Once again, he surrounded the capital, took possession of the rivers, and which ran through the valleys, and which alone with these rivers supplied Gondar water. So he was about to starve them out, make them thirst to death, right? He took post at every entrance into the town and every place, commanding those entrances if he intended to besiege it. Yeah, this was siege warfare. Okay, this was siege warfare here. And Makael revealed that immediately after his arrival in the city, he did. How you gonna have a hostile takeover and then turn around, pay homage to this boy king? You know that was a backhand pimp slap. You know that was a backhand slap. You know that was disrespectful. But the chief then, so he went and paid homage to the young emperor, who in return invested him in the full insignia of Ras. The king was surrounded, and he was young. Yeah. So the chief then moved into a palace previously occupied by one of Empress Mentewwab's brothers. That's disrespectful. This dude was mad disrespectful. He not only surrounded the palace, not only low-key forced the boy king to give him a title, he then slept in the house where Queen Mother's brother used to sleep at. Yeah. 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 What do y'all think about that? Shoot. Now, after his arrival, it was a hostile takeover, right? So on the third after his arrival, he held a council. This man held a council in the presence of the boy king. It gets worse. The dude set up shop in the palace. I'm reading it. And he expressed, according to the author, such surprise that both the king and queen, after the experience of so many years, had not discovered that they were equally unfit to govern a kingdom. You went into this man's castle and told them to their face they were unfit to rule. Man. But where the nobles at? Where all the other people that was out there in and around the throne and everything? They're scary. Okay. He was able to speak like that in front of their king. Yeah. He had control of law and order. And he ventured to steal many of the articles and sacred items, though they was exposed at night and day from Monday to Friday without any guards. He went on stole them anyway. He didn't care about that. He went on to just because he could. And now at a banquet, there was an assassination attempt. Okay, finally, somebody tried to do something, right? Somebody tried to do something to him. There was an assassination attempt, right? And so Michael's opponents, on the other hand, were infuriated with this turn of events and seemed to try to destroy this man. Okay, so not long after he set up shop, while he was holding court in his house, which faced the palace, a shot was fired from it. The bullet missed him, but killed one of his servants, a dwarf who was fanning flies from his face. This dude caught a stray. Man, y'all missed. Got these fancy weapons and everything, you missed. and took out a dwarf. What did he do? What did he do? All he was doing is fanning the fly from the man's face, and he caught it. Yeah, the incident resulted in pandemonium, which set the palace on fire. Now, the attempted assassination took this man over the edge. Took him over the edge. So, assuming there was some conspirators, there was some people that was conspiring against him, right? Okay, so assuming that coexistence was no longer possible, he had the young boy king taken out. He had the young boy. Now, mind you, started in the 1700s. Let me turn the page. That Iyashu I was assassinated in 1706. So from 1706 all the way up until this point, like the 1769, the Gondar was unstable and their leaders was being taken out. Then the young boy king was murdered in 1769. And okay, not only that, to make sure nobody in his family would succeed him, Michael took out one of his uncles. Yeah, the man who, because what happened is when the boy king was killed, okay, one of his great uncles took the throne and he proclaimed himself Emperor Johannes II. Then the uncle, after he refused to accompany Michael on a campaign, he refused to go because you took my nephew out, right? He was poisoned. Yeah. The double murder marked a further decline of the Gondar monarchy. Yeah. Yeah. Starting with, which begun, like I said before, over a half a century earlier with the assassination of Iyashu I in 1706. In the period that followed, central government disintegrated. The provinces became too splintered, too divided. And the Ethiopian historians would later speak about this time and era, like in the book of Judges, Judges chapter 21, verse 25. There was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Yeah. The political structure was disintegrated, but caravans were still traveling for the most part. The Muslims continued to try to go through the old routes. This linked to various provinces, including southern lands beyond the confines of the state to the ports and also into Sudan, forming an ongoing economic unity. The institution of Gondar-based monarchy, moreover, it continued to exercise some prestige, but it wasn't the jewel that it should have been, it could have been. Okay? And so, but the inhabitants of Christian highlands recognized a single capital. The inhabitants of the highlands recognized single capital, Axum, to which they went on a pilgrimage, and a single religious head, the Abun, for the most part. Okay, so for the most part, resident in Gondar, they would still go to Axum as a pilgrimage. Ethiopia also had its renowned centers of scholarship and writings and so on, but Gondar was basically no more, right? And so after those different assassinations and destabilization, Gondar is fragile. And this would lead us into the 18th century. This would lead us into the advent of Torodros. And of course, how they had to then fight Queen Victoria. But we'll talk about that on another time, right? And so today, Gondar legacy lives on its ruins. The Fasiladas, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, stands as Africa's most unique collection of medieval castles. Debre Berem Selassie Church still shines, its ceiling of angelic faces watching silently over worshippers. Gondar is remembered as Ethiopia's lost Camelot, a tale of glory and warning. Okay, Gondar stones still speak, though the kings are silent. So the rise and fall of Gondar reminds us that that empires are not eternal. They stand not only on stone walls, but on unity, wisdom, and faith. When these foundations crumble, even the greatest and mightiest castles will fall. Gondar may have declined, but the ideas and the jewel still endures. A forgotten empire that still speaks across centuries, calling us to remember, to learn, and to reflect. Right? That's what it's about, y'all. Okay? So, yeah, this is King Cam with Ujumbe podcast. Ujumbe means message. And so, but before we go, this is our connection here, Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush, a sacred unified ark. If you want to learn more about Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush, like and subscribe. See what I'm saying? Let's learn together. If you're enjoying it, if you enjoyed this podcast, share with somebody that you think may like it, right? Or share it on your social media of choice, right? So we talked about pillar 1, Ethiopia, the source and sanctuary. Eventually we'll get to pillar number 2, Kemet, the blueprint of sacred civilization. 3, Kush and Nubia, and number 4, the hidden code. But our primary focus today was on Ethiopia, right? Here's some books. The Feta Nagas and the Kabra Nagas, okay? Also, E.A. Waters Buzz, the Book of Mysteries of the Heavens and the Earth. The Africans who wrote the Bible. That's a good one. And we're going to be dealing with chapter 8. Chapter 8, The Ethiopians of History by Richard Pankhurst. Get that. The affiliate link is in the description. All right. This is my book. Okay. The Crusades and Jihad in East Africa, Religious Conflicts and Their Impact by yours truly. Get the book. We may have a discussion on that. Now, the bonus episode coming up. The bonus episode is coming up. The Scorpion King, the Nubian origins of Egypt's first pharaoh. I have not forgotten about our beloved Nubia. Okay, that is a bonus episode. Shout out to the Ujumbe fam and those who support. Yeah, we're gonna get that bonus episode for you really soon. All right. So speaking of that, here's the Ujumbe members. Abina Scott. Shout out to Brother Mo and Brother Isu from One Voice Africa. They help tremendously, and they make this possible, right? And so join the membership. With membership, it comes with benefits. They get the videos first. They get all the ideas. Matter of fact, they kind of help me with my live stream ideas and concepts. All right, let's go. So we talked about the foundation of the city, economic and religious life, the golden age, shadows of division, the era of decline, the fall of Gondar, and the fallen king. We talked about the rise and fall of Gondar. Like I said, if you like the content, share it with somebody that may enjoy it, and share it on Instagram. All right. So this is the King Cam Ujumbe podcast, Ujumbe Meets Message. We talked about the rise and fall of Gondar, Ethiopia's fallen empire. If you want to catch up with our playlist, Ethiopia, the source and sanctuary, I got the playlist for you. If you want to catch up with our previous episode dealing with imams and kings and the Ottoman Empire, I got that for you. All right. This is the King Cam Ujumbe podcast, Ujumbe Means Message, and I will talk to you later.